Hello, and welcome to Markets in Focus. My name is Joe Bell, and today I'm going to walk you through some of the most interesting financial market themes that I'm observing today, August 1st, 2025. A lot of news at the end of the week that caused volatility in the stock market and the bond market on this Friday. New tariffs were announced by President Trump overnight. We'll talk about the implications of that. But then the jobs report. This US labor market is in much worse shape than we previously thought and anybody expected. And that jobs report has impacted short-term yields and increases of a rate cut at the September Fed meeting coming up. So first, President Trump announced new tariffs overnight on several different countries. And if those new tariffs go ahead in 7 days as planned, Bloomberg Economics, as represented by this chart here, estimates that the average U.S. tariff rate will rise up to 15.2% from 13.3%. If you recall, that average tariff rate was only at 2.3% before President Trump took office. It's now up to north of 15%. That is the highest average tariff rate since 1930s. Now, that caused a little bit of volatility to start the morning, but this really hit the markets in a bad way. We had the monthly jobs report that came out on the heels of that GDP data that looked pretty strong, and it showed that actual jobs were 73,000 during the month of July. Estimates were 102,000, so it came in below expectations, but that was not the worst part of it for me. If you look back at May and June, the previous 2 months, we had originally reported that May was 144,000, June was 147,000. Both of those together dropped 258,000 jobs respectively, and only 19,000 jobs were added in May, only 14,000 jobs were added in June. If you put together this 3-month stretch, we haven't seen this week of job growth since the early part of 2020 during the early stages of the pandemic. When you look at the unemployment rate, it only jumped from 4.1 to 4.2%. Labor participation rate dramatically dropped as well. So we saw a lot of people leaving the workforce altogether. There's no two ways about it. This data is not very strong, some of the weakest data that we've seen in months. Now, the bond market reacted very dramatically. We saw treasuries rallied, right? Prices moved up, and that is because short-term yields dropped significantly after that weak jobs data. Now, a lot of this was prompted that the jobs report prompted traders to increase their bets that the Fed was going to cut rates in September coming up. Remember, on Thursday afternoon, after the Fed left rates paused at 4.5% at their meeting on Wednesday, after that early GDP report came out with PCE slightly elevated, those odds were almost at 50-50. In fact, there was about a 48% probability based on the Fed fund futures of a rate cut, a 25 basis point rate cut at the September meeting coming up. That has jumped all the way up to nearly 80% overnight with this jobs data. It is going to be interesting. We will get a couple more inflation prints before that September meeting. We'll have the Jackson Hole Economic Summit with the Fed out there as well, where Powell typically speaks. It will be very interesting with the timing of this jobs data that is definitively showing that the labor market is in much worse shape than we had previously seen based on the labor market data before. So a lot for the market to digest ahead of this weekend. Now, thinking of the Fed, we've got to talk about Taylor Swift. And why is that? Because Mrs. Swift or Miss Swift has made the Fed Beige Book. This is the Beige Book summary economics of all the central banks, or the different regional banks rather, around the US. They put this out about 8 times per year, and they actually referenced her tour as a tailwind for economic activity. If you look at the stats, in some cities where the tour went through for the weekend, they saw a boost of about 50% in hotel prices. And it was so large that the Beige Book, rarely mentioning stuff like concerts, actually mentioned it in terms of a boost to economic activity across the cities that it visited. So congratulations to Taylor Swift on her success of making it in the Beige Book. With that, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.